Who's building an AI app? Yeah. Who's looking for someone to build an AI app for them? Okay, put them higher. This is your chance, man. This is your chance. Okay, but be careful. They'll all vibe code your app, and who's vibe coding? What? So little people? Who doesn't know what vibe coding is yet? It's okay.
They're all my friends now.
Okay. I don't know if we should tell them, should we? Well, welcome at AI Builders. We are. What we do? We are a non-profit generative AI developer kind of community, I guess. And we want to start in many cities, and we also are looking forward to make a community platform. So we're working on that. Anyone is familiar with Zapier or N8N? Yeah, it's easy, right? Okay, so we're making like a lot of these. I mean, if you can find the API key. But yeah, we're making like a community platform that everyone can contribute to, and we have a crazy dream to make this community completely self-organizing, meaning that there won't be a CEO or someone. We will just all be participants. Everyone equal amount of power and benefits, whether that's economic or swag, t-shirts, or whatever, depending on how much you contribute, maybe as well a bit, but not too much, because then you would never be able to catch up with the guys that started before. So that's kind of a crazy dream to counter kind of the, AI is gonna make me millions, which of course we also gonna do at the same time, right? Everyone, who's starting his own company? Anyone who has his own company? Okay. Wow, that's a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurial people. That's beautiful. Okay, and then one more question. Who works for a boss, like an employee, corporate, or not corporate, scale up? Okay. How do you guys do both at the same time? Okay, respect. Yeah, so we will have some cool stuff in there, like, of course, making the job of hosting events much easier, because it's actually a lot of work. So thanks, Chris, organizing. There's Fausto, he's getting a lot of great speakers. And Ilya, where are you? Ilya there, hand for Ilya. And DJ, where's DJ? There he is. And Karen, where are you? Here, in the kitchen. Oh, wow, amazing. So yeah, soon it will be all of you. So we will be clapping the whole the whole thing, because this AI will engage everyone on WhatsApp real time using some unofficial APIs, of course. Because Mark Zuckerberg is a bit annoying. Oh yeah, so we don't do Python and React anymore that much. That was before, but we just now, that's my WhatsApp. We're not looking for. If you want to organize an event like a hack day, or you want to start in a new city, it has to be a big city, okay, not your town. Then you can also walk up to one of us. If you know speakers or companies that are like into developer things, and this is our WhatsApp group, which a lot of people are leaving as well sometimes because it's a bit messy. So you can also try to archive it, but I think it's not working that well yet. I don't know what Mark Zuckerberg is doing these days, but this wouldn't be possible without our first speaker, Ian, coming all the way from Manchester. I don't know how to accent that. Okay, you can come up and connect already.
Thank you.
And he's going to tell us about brick tape.
Hello.
And who of you guys know what RAG is? Everyone, right? Because it was on the Luma to do your homework and tell with ChatGPT to know what retrieval augmented generation is. But if you didn't know yet, Ian will also help with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Try and explain once again. Right? So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the pizzas as well.
Yeah. We picked some pizzas. We picked some pizzas, and we also got the real currency of developers. We bought some stickers, so if you want a sticker, we can grab a sticker. So, this is the second time this talk's been out, and this talk is all about what's hard about building LLM-powered apps. Okay, so maybe also could be subtitled, what's hard about putting LLM-powered applications into production? Because I guess everybody here has something that they would consider an app that's built with an LLM. But how many of you are actually serving other users in a robust and scalable way with those applications? And how many of you have hit unusual or unpredictable behaviors with prompting and with other techniques that you use to build LLM-powered applications? And that's what I'm going to get into in this talk. I was told by Arthur that I had to have a slide about me, so I don't normally put this in my talks, but I'm a bit of a veteran actually. I'm probably one of the older people in this room. One of the older people in this room. And I've worked for 14 years in telecoms, but for the last 14 years or so I've been in cloud computing. I've been in AWS, Mongo, a Series D startup, and now I'm in GripTape. I live in Yorkshire in England, and Arthur also told me to put GIFs in, so I put this GIF in. This is what I think of GIFs. This was actually made by somebody that used to report to me in my last job, so even my team know that this is what I think of GIFs. Now I'm with GripTape. We are a 20-ish person company, seed stage startup headquartered in Seattle, Washington in the US. And what we build is a couple of products, and we're working on a third. We built an open source framework, an Apache 2.0 license framework, which is intended to orchestrate and provide structure around production grade apps using large language models. So it's like an abstraction layer that goes on top of your LLM and solves problems like orchestration, vector database access, ETL deployment, observability, and some of these other concerns. You can use the framework for free. You can take it and modify it, Apache 2.0 license. We also have a cloud service, which I'll touch upon very briefly in this talk, which is a runtime that makes it easier to deploy and operate applications built using our framework, and also takes care of some of the concerns around data management, ETL, ingest, that kind of heavy lifting that you would normally have to use something complex like an AWS or an Azure or a Google Cloud to do. We can do it much more simply if you're running LLM-powered applications with our special purpose platform. And then we have something else which is currently in preview called GripTape Nodes, and that's a visual builder for AI applications. It's more intended for creative use cases, and I'll say that one of our co-founders was the visual effects artist responsible for animating Gollum in Lord of the Rings. So the other thing we're trying to do is serve creative use cases with Gen AI models like Flux and others for generating assets for the movie and video game industry. That's our second product area that we're currently working on. So why did we build this? Well, we built it because there are some hard things about building LLM-powered apps, and particularly about putting them into production. And some of these things are so well known that they've become jokes, which I'll move on to in a second. But I think the hardest thing is actually dealing with the interface paradigm. Most people experiment with LLMs using chat, okay? But most application interactions in the world right now don't happen using chat. They happen within systems, right? Systems talking to systems. And in my last job, I was a marketing leader in this Series D startup. We had 3 LLM applications in production just in my department. One of them used chat, and that was a simple thing for converting videos into blog posts. But the other 2 were not chat-based interfaces. They were persona mapping, and they were, something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, account intelligence collections. And those 2 things were both integrated with our Salesforce. So something would happen in Salesforce, an action would happen against the large language model, and data would go back into Salesforce. There's no chat prompt, and there's no human driving that. It's all driven by contact upload or other actions taking place in our Salesforce environment, right? And that's how most LLM applications will be in the future. They won't be like this. They won't be chat applications. They'll be system-based actions that are driving LLMs to take action. And if you're building things that aren't chat, what API do you want to build against? And you go on RLangchain, which is kind of an interesting place to hang out. There are 2 types of people in there. There are this is also complicated and badly documented. And then there's the other camp, which is, why use a framework at all? You know, why not just write your agentic system yourself? Why not just write all of this scaffolding yourself. And I would say, even if you're not using our framework, using a framework is a very sensible thing to do to avoid provider lock-in. If you're only writing code against OpenAPI's API or Anthropic's API, what happens in this case? What happens when the cost or latency of doing everything inside one of these large-scale models, one of these provided models, becomes too high, and how do you rescue yourself out of that? So a framework is a good idea for flexibility and avoiding cul-de-sacking. Now, the other interesting topic areas, we'll roll our eyes and laugh about this. Math. So you've all asked an LLM to perform some complicated mathematical function, right? It's like off by a factor of 10, close but no cigar, closer but more expensive. And actually, there's some really interesting stuff that came out last week. I don't know if anybody's seen this. How do LLMs approach mathematical problem solving? Has anyone seen this paper and the articles that it spawned? This is interesting. This is like Anthropic introspecting their own new model, their Sonnet 2.7 model, and looking at how Sonnet actually tackles mathematical problem solving. It runs two thought pathways, one which approximates the answer and one which calculates what the last digit should be. And then it merges those two things together at the end. And guess what? Results could vary, which is the other problem here. This is the main problem about doing logic and doing maths with LLMs. It's not that they're wrong, it's that they're subtly wrong in a different way every single time you ask the question. They are non-deterministic systems, right? So you need to wrap something around that in order to provide rigor, to allow you to use engineering techniques to drive those outputs. I'll come to how you might do that in a bit. The other thing that we all know about is knowledge of the world beyond the model. I'd evaluate this, what is today's date, as unhelpful. This one's quite interesting. This is the so-called Super Bowl problem. Who won the most recent Super Bowl? I mean, it starts really well. They're very, very confident, and then it tells us that it's reporting on something that happened 2 years ago. Yeah. So the problem here, of course, is knowledge cut-off. Okay. And in the Super Bowl problem, the problem is that we contextualized our question against the date, and because the model doesn't intrinsically know the date, it makes it impossible for it to answer the question in the first place. And now, whether if you go to ChatGPT, not OpenAI's API, but ChatGPT, and ask it what the date is, it will correctly answer. Do you know how it does that? Every day they inject today's date into the system prompt. So it'll tell you the day, usually for California, if you ask it, which kind of indicates what the problem is. So you can solve these problems, right? You can solve them by decomposition. We get today's date, we ask the model who won the Super Bowl this year. Getting today's date is, of course, something that we can do with the system clock, using a function by equipping the model with tools. And then this is something where we've got to reach out to the internet and use tools again with something like web search and web scrapers to get that data from websites, which models can do if you equip them with the right tooling to do that. And actually, by using that same approach, you can solve the other problem as well, which is calculations. You can give your LLM a math tool, and it will then be able to accurately perform calculations for you. And usually what you're doing here is you're allowing your model to execute arbitrary Python code, constructing code snippets, evaluating those code snippets, gathering the results, and feeding that back to the LLM. That's how mathematics can be made to work really reliably with large language models. Probably a lot of you have already done this stuff. So, how do we help? Well, I think the main issue here is decomposition, right? You want to break up your LLM-powered applications into components in the same way that you do with traditional software engineering, and you want to take more of a software engineering approach and less of a prompt engineering approach. And that's one of the things that we can do with our framework. We make it possible to write code in Python, basically break down your jobs into linear pipelines, DAG workflows, or to create agentic systems, and decompose your LLM application into different components. And with those different components, use techniques like structured output and validation to make sure that you're getting outputs that are going to make your applications much, much more reliable. Now, agentic systems, many people regard this as like the holy grail. Just give everything to the language model and allow the language model to determine how the control flow works. And a lot of you will be familiar with this idea. Agentic systems, you think about your team of staff, Okay, your different roles that you're going to have within your application. You give your agents different rules, different guidelines, and different prompts. And then you have some managing agent that orchestrates those different agents, invokes them, validates their outputs, re-invokes them, and eventually your system converges on what you regard as the desired state. This sort of analogy, you really got to stretch it if you want to get really good results. You've really got to decompose to a very fine level of detail. I'll show you a repo at the end with some demos in it, and one of those is a hotel management app. I literally have a team member whose job it is to figure out whether or not dates are in the past or the future. That's the kind of level of granularity that you have to go to with your prompts and with your rules in order to make these systems work. And the other really, really important thing about them is agent, the same root word goes to agency, right? With an agent, you're giving agency to the LLM to define the control flow. And that can get expensive really, really fast. Okay, what you're looking at here is telemetry data that comes out of an application built with our framework. It's actually the hotel booking app. And every one of these yellow bars is a ChatGPT invocation with a payload. And with an agentic system, you don't control how many swings of the bat or swings of the golf club the control flow has. You could have tens or hundreds of API requests going out to your LLM provider in order to get to the state that you want at the end. So I would say observability is critical, metrics are critical. You want to be gathering token counts. We were talking earlier about energy usage. This is where you would embed that. You would put metadata onto these traces with those characteristics, bubble that up through your observability system, aggregate it at the top level, then you can figure out how much these applications are actually costing you to run. And they can be significantly costly. So I would say instrumentation is key if you're getting into anything like a complex agentic system. We have a customer called God Mode. This is quite interesting. They're doing the same kind of stuff I was doing in my last job. They're doing account research. So when you're approaching a customer, your SDRs or your BDRs that are doing this cold calling or cold emailing or writing LinkedIn sequences to your customers, they're equipped with information about the client based on the persona type they're targeting, current news, financial data, information that might be available in the public domain about the organization that we're trying to sell to. And that's precisely what this company did. They built all this using our open source framework. And they don't use agents, they use flows like pipelines. They've defined the different steps that they're going to have in their research process. And they go through each one of these steps to generate this tailored output that is then provided to their customers who want to do AI-assisted sales outreach. It's worth a read, quite an interesting use case. But it's not agentic, it's a business application that's in prod, but it is more of a pipeline-based architecture, really for cost control reasons. We also built something similar, which is about email processing, same thing. So we've got, you mentioned Zapier earlier, Zapier events, a synchronous assistant, which is running in the middle here, and I use this for email summarization. So you can see this example here. This is an email that I got from Arta where the agent pulls out key dates and deadlines. It tells me categorically whether or not I need to take action on this email, whether or not I need to reply to it, and that gets sent into my Slack within just a couple of minutes of me receiving an email. And that's done with very simple serverless agent invocation running on our cloud platform. We've just got rules that guide the behavior of the agent, essentially telling it. Note the rule order, it's quite important. So state if there are dates or deadlines, append information to the summary, always start by stating who this email is from and to. You are an email summarizing agent. Your role is to read email, summarize it, pull out key dates, refer to your rules for the mandatory information that you must provide with each summary, and then the key one at the end, be concise.
It's the shortest one.
Yeah, exactly right. So the rule order is important. We're basically equipping this agent with the knowledge that it needs to act in that role. It's a super simple use case, but it's actually really, really effective. So, integrating with private and up-to-date data. This is the other big topic area. So, a few different approaches here. Got many customers actually that are interested in using agents to interact with data that they hold in existing systems. It's obviously data that isn't available to LLM providers when they're training, so they need a solution for getting access to that data. I'd say there's three popular models. One that everybody's pretty familiar with is RAG for unstructured, right? PDF corpuses, text documents, vectorizing or chunking, ideally semantic chunking, vectorizing, storing that, looking at those vectors when you perform a query, doing some type of re-ranking, and then using that to augment a prompt. On the other side, you've got structured, which is working with structured data sets through natural language or equipping agents to work with structured data sets. There's a lot over here. Everything as much as arbitrary Python execution with pandas data frames to manipulate data for time series data. Custom tools covers a real multitude of different options. And then in the middle, you've got hybrid. Has anybody got experience with hybrid search? LLMs? Wow, probably more. So this is like, the classic example would be like recruitment, okay? I've got candidates. I know structured things about candidates, their location, their eligibility to work, their age, lots of structured data. But I've also got unstructured data like their LinkedIn profile or their resume, right, their CV. I can load those things into a hybrid storage system, and I can say, show me everybody that's got skills in Python that lives in Amsterdam. Amsterdam comes out of the structured field, that's the pre-filter, and then the skills in Python comes out of semantic understanding of the LinkedIn profile. You combine those two things together to enable you to ask questions that have both structured and unstructured attributes embedded within them. We do this on our cloud platform, and you can write code, of course, to do it as well, but we do it on our cloud platform. With RAG, there's two distinct phases. I talked about this bit already, but the other thing to remember is the prep phase, collecting your documents, splitting, cleaning. There's a lot of work in this box. There's an excellent new model from Mistral for PDF interpretation. I don't know if anybody's experimented with that. It allows you to take structured and unstructured data out of PDFs and make sense of it, even if the PDF formatting is extremely complex. Okay? And then with our framework, you can actually do all of this completely locally. So if you grab this code sample here that you'll see on GitHub, we have a fully local implementation with OLARMA for local inference, local embeddings, local re-ranker, and local PG vector or any other vector store can be used actually with our drivers. And you can do all this in a fully air-gapped environment with no cloud provider costs, and no need to leak private data to a hyperscaler or anybody else. And the last thing that I would like you to do is grab this. Where we're at the moment with the product and framework is we're really early. We're kind of pre-revenue. We have a handful of customers, but not many people that are using the framework in anger. So my big ask really for this group is I'd like you to try it really more than anything else, even if it's just reading the docs, grabbing the sample repo that's on this last slide here at the bottom. You've got a photo of that. I'll share these slides as well. And if you've got questions, jump into our Discord and give us feedback or questions that you might have about the framework. We'd love to get you all using it and see what the experience is like and get feedback so we can improve the product. Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, here.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Let's imagine the company has a lot of data, as you said, and they're probably going to use one of the solutions that you also talked about. And still, when they prepare the exact amount of data they would like to supply to the LLM to being able to answer the question, they still share the data with LLM, with the company that's hosting it. So, is there an issue here, and how companies are going to approach it? And maybe
From a privacy perspective, you mean?
yes.
I think the answer is it depends on where the LLM is running and what kind of data you're sending to it. Okay, so you clearly don't want to be sending confidential or other regulated data to entities that you either don't trust or don't have the right kind of contractual coverage with, like a data processing agreement or similar, right? So you need to have that trust structure in place before you start sending data that might be subject to regulatory or other constraints. This is one of the reasons that many of our customers are super interested in local inference solutions, these local vector store solutions and local inference solutions. We have plenty of customers in Europe whose level of interest in those types of solutions is kind of increasing rapidly given the current political and regulatory environment. So I would say that local inference is definitely a solution that you can use there. You can use OLARMA, you can use capable models like Mistral 7B, you can use local embedding models, and you can also find embedding models and other similar LLMs on Hugging Face if you want to run those as well. One thing about our framework is it is modular. So if you look in the sample code, you'll see this, but you can construct a pipeline out of a series of prompts, and you can use different language models for each prompt, each step in that pipeline. So if you have parts that you consider to be non-proprietary, you can use an external model. If you've got parts that are subject to regulatory constraint, you can use a local inference model. And we have other features in the pipeline that can allow, in the framework that can allow you to keep sensitive data entirely off prompt as well. We have a technology component called off-prompt inference, which is tokenizing, summarizing, constraining which data gets sent to which endpoints as well. So we've tried to engineer that into the framework. I think you should take a look at it, and if you've got feedback, if it doesn't serve your use case, then that'd be really valuable for us to hear about.
Any other question?
Hi Ian, thanks a lot for the presentation. I have a non-technical related question. I happen to notice that your logo was written in Morse code. Is that a coincidence or was that something intentional?
I think that's an intentional design feature.
I see. And does it actually spell the name of your company?
I don't know. I'm going to check that. That's very good. Yeah. So does everybody know what grip tape is? Yeah. Like it's friction tape that goes on a skateboard, right? And the reason for the name is about providing something that is sticky on a platform so you don't slip off it, kind of improving the way in which you interface with the platform that you're using. That's one of the reasons we chose it. The other reason we chose it is that our CEO and founder he's almost as old as me, but he's still got several skateboards in his garage. So.
But still, you had a slide deck.
Yeah, very good. We're looking for someone to work in marketing. Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Talking about easy solutions, Simos has made like a really cool easy solution for even less technical people, and also some easy solution using a local thing for doing marketing. So give a big hand.
So hello everyone, my name is Simos, I'm the founder of Sidebun, and today I'm going to show you just very briefly what Sidebun is, just for you to know, and then I'm going to go through 2 challenges that I faced while building Sidebun, but also the business, and just give some tips in case you face some similar issues. So first of all, the problem that we're trying to solve is that for small business owners, and when I mean small, when I say small, I mean like think of shops or fitness coaches or very small startups that are just starting. So for these kind of businesses to create a website and your online presence really takes time. It takes time to go into Wix, Webflow, WordPress, you name it, and learn how the tool works, especially for non-technical people. And for those non-technical people, it also takes quite a lot of money if you want to build a website. So being in an AI event, I think you can imagine what's next. So how we help is that we allow users to create, or we provide an interface, a platform through which they can create a website just by chatting. But that's not just it, because in a lot of platforms you can do that. You can also just click on anything and of course change text, but that's not it, because you can also, in the same way that you do it in Cursor, just ask for something and then see it live on the page instantly. So it's one platform that combines everything, but for very small businesses, combined with analytics, with lead generation, a way to gather leads easier. So it's really for businesses that know nothing about coding, about websites, and just want a website. So my dream eventually is to be able to allow users to simply by using WhatsApp create and edit and change their websites. If you want to change, for example, the opening hours of your shop, you should just be able to chat and change them instantly. So what the Sidebun platform allows you is to create a website, as I mentioned, of course, but also customize it using AI or, again, drag and drop builder, and then publish it by buying a domain name on your own or just by buying a domain name through Sidebun, and then be able to understand how many users go into your website, as well as be able to track any form that you have on your website automatically. Now, so when I started, I didn't actually exactly know how this was going to work. My dream eventually was to be able to change not just websites, but also apps. And I soon realized that's nearly impossible. So how would you go about making changes to an existing HTML file with LLMs? And the first thing I tried was just asking the LLM to change the whole file. I think before Cursor, a lot of us just went into ChatGPT or Claude and asked it to just change anything, and instead of just copy-pasting everything back into VS Code, you would just ask it to provide the whole file. And that's how I started. But it was very, very slow. Like, it would take a minute, and that was not really acceptable for me, given that I have customers that know nothing about coding, and it was not that nice experience. And on top of that, at some point, it started providing things like that. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. So I need to find a way to go from essentially this, a customer asking, I want to add 2 more items to the menu, to this. In a way, like VS Code does it with div. Like, how do you change that, but only these small areas? So, anyone has any idea how that works in Cursor, Klein, or any other tool?
Not always.
Any guesses? Yeah, go.
Yeah, so just providing the whole file again, then puts against replaces the original file, and the cursor highlights for you the difference.
Yes, which would again be very slow, for me at least. So, yeah, so the question was if you know how this, how you could do this without relying on the LLM providing the full file back to you. So how could you actually make the diff? So I didn't do a lot of research, but when I was starting, when I was trying to do that, I didn't do a lot of research because there was nothing but that. But there are a couple of ways that I thought this could be done. So the first one would be with pre-identification. So you have the file, and then you ask the LLM which parts are relevant for this change. And then the LLM, in this case, I'm using OpenAI icons, but it's anything, it will provide just those changes. And then you go back to the LLM again, and you ask, okay, on that part, I want you to change this, I want you to make this change. And then you just replace what the LLM provides back with this change. So that's one way. This is not very accurate, I have to say, but if you combine it with the next thing, it is very accurate. So how a lot of open source tools do it, like either Klein and even Cloud Canvas, is with a search and replace method. It's very dumb, but in a way it works. So you ask the LLM to provide both the like Control F, you provide the search parameter, but also the replacement parameter. So if you want an update, for example, and this is coming from Cloud Canvas, if you want an update, then it will provide the new string as well as the old string. And that kind of works in Cursor, works in a lot of tools, but not always. And to be fair, I was not so fond of this because it's not very deterministic. So you might, for example, ask it to replace this part, but you might have this part in a lot of places in your code. So what happens then? So these are the three options, but then I wanted to do something more deterministic. So I thought, okay, what if I ask it to provide the code that would programmatically change the exact part that I needed to be changed? So my favorite breakfast when I was a kid was Cheerios, and as an adult, my favorite import is Cheerio. So if you don't know Cheerio is a framework, a library that allows you to manipulate HTML. So essentially, this is JavaScript. This is a node, for example. You can tell it the idea of this element, just remove it completely. I mean, for me that was mind-blowing because I could actually change with less tokens a lot of things. I did not need to search and replace. I did not need to do a lot of things. But there was one small problem that you actually need ID on everything, literally everything. So, and that's why actually I just by scripting I had ID on everything. And the only problem then was JavaScript, on which, that's a long story. If you want, we can talk about it later, but there are some ways you can change JavaScript also programmatically using Cheerio. So, it's also scalable because if you find an issue, something does not work correctly or you cannot change it, you can literally do it. And this was my the initial examples I gave to the LLMs. And that's how it sort of looks now. Like, there's a lot of examples, but it's small edge cases that I saw were not working, and I thought, okay, I can give an example, and it should be able to do it, right? With such a place, you would not be able to do that. And then I thought, okay, let's go into production. Only there's a small issue there that in a lot of cases, what it would return back would actually break the page. So what I also do on top of that, I do a lot of validations on both events as well as syntax checks and link checks. And then if there is an error, then I go back to the LLM and ask it to provide a solution, and then back again. And usually that works on the first try. If not, then there's a second try. If not, then it completely skips the chains and it has to do it again. So, any questions, any ideas on how this could be improved? No, okay. Because I'm really looking for improvements here. I did go from 70% accuracy to 99.5, but I'm really looking for that 5% or 0.5%.
How do you detect when it goes wrong?
Because it doesn't work. There are a couple of things, and
It blows up.
no. Again, programmatically, I can check if there's going to be any console error logs, or if there's let's say a script whose URL is going to fail, or for example, if there is an on-click event but there is no related function. So these are pretty much programmatic. So the next thing I want to do is try to automate the testing on top of it. So for every button, there should be like a click event, and sort of automate that, and at the end of the chains, check if everything works fine.
Maybe I have some ideas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it works or not, because in the past we have used them to do classification. So the issue is like, okay, I'll repeat it. So basically, we're trying to use them to do classification. So basically, we have a predefined class. So sometimes it doesn't always work. So the accuracy is like 70% or 80%, and we're stuck on it. And because this is like domain-specific knowledge, there's no way the only way you can find to them, but that's another story. So what we tried is actually we're trying to use multi-shard learning. So what we have done is actually based on the examples, we go back to the historical data, try to look at similar descriptions or similar use cases, and then feed it back.
Okay.
So in general, in the beginning of this process, it helps, but there's still some errors. Then we fix it, and they add it to the database. So you can iteratively improve the performance until you reach the acceptance rates. Yep. So I'm not sure. Yeah.
Nice, thanks. So now I've got the changes. So a big part of what I want to achieve is completed, and then I completed the whole app, and then it was time for do some lead generation to find leads. So how do you actually find leads? So it's important to note again that my target audience was very small business, right? The sources that I'm using are essentially business registries, so everyone who registers, for example, on Kafka or any other business registry in Europe, and Google Maps. But I want something fully automated. I don't really want to go into business registry because I need volume. I really need volume, a lot of customers. So how do I do that completely automated? This is my tech stack. So I'm using NA10 for workflow automation. If you don't know NA10, I'm going to explain in a bit what it is. Base.ro as sort of my database because it's easier to manipulate than a database, and it's like Airtable, only you can self-host it. And NA10, by the way, it's also self-hosted. And then Pipedrive as my CRM, Lena as my outreach program, and then some extra tools for scraping and as well as screenshots, which I'm going to explain later. Now, oops, I'm missing a page here, but in any case, if you don't know what NA10 is, imagine like if Zapier went into the automation gym and ate all the steroids. It's literally Zapier on steroids. So you have a canvas on which you have nodes you can just drag and drop onto it. It's like Make, if you know Make. Only the big difference with Make is that you can literally do anything with two very powerful nodes, the code node and the HTTP request node. If there is no integration, you can just use the HTTP request node and call any API, any website is going to return the results as you were doing it from Postman or just from the browser. And with the code, you can just put it on the page and connect it with any node. It will take an input, and you can write in Python or JavaScript, and it will return an output. I'm not using code, by the way, in none of my automations, but it's a very powerful tool for a lot of people that I know. So that's how anything works. And my first automation, the first thing I wanted to do is, of course, capture the context from the business register. So I have an automation that goes through a lot of steps, and this is the key one, I would say, because this one is that does the scraping of the website. It goes through an API, gets the results, and then I'm doing some data manipulation and sends it to Baserog, which is, as I mentioned, my intermediary database until it goes into my CRM. And that's the very simple workflow for capturing the context. This was the, let's say, the introduction into the next part, which is a bit more tricky and difficult. So the next part is, how do you work with Google Maps? How do you scrape data from Google Maps? Again, to give you a bit of context, why I need Google Maps is because it has a lot of businesses in it, and a lot of details about businesses that I could contact, like small shops, a lot of I don't know, doctor's offices and things like that. And I could get from there if they have a website, their phone number, and a lot more information. So initially I tried a few different tools. I tried also Google Maps API, but there was a small problem that the Google Maps API returns only up to 60 results for any given area. So if you search for the Netherlands, for example, and ask it to return all of the ice cream shops, it will only return 60. And there's no way to go further. So what I did is I vibe coded it, and that was before vibe coding. Before vibe coding, and I created a very small interface for me to know to be able to create a grid of areas, and then be able to select the keywords that I want and try to process them. The processing part happens in an A10, but the important part for me is to know also, how many businesses do I have in each area, and also be able to know which areas have scraped eventually. So I put all that information into a Baserog, which is like my queue. It acts as my queue, and then I'm going into a more elaborate workflow in an A10, which starts from getting the information from Baserog, getting the information from Google Maps, from the Google Maps API, and then I split that into 3 different categories. The 3 categories for me are customers that do have a website, or businesses that do have a website, businesses that do not have a website, and businesses that do have a website, but it's actually a Facebook or an Instagram link. So, but that's not all, because I also wanted to know, okay, I have the businesses, but I need more details from them, right? I need their email addresses so I can send them an email. So I create more workflows, more automation around it. So in the first category, where there's no website, what I can do is I can call SERP APIs, and I can get information, and I'm using an extractor node. Actually, what I forgot to mention is very important, is that N8N has a very nice interface to configure agents. I can show you later if you want. You can literally just add any model that's available on N8N, add your own API keys, and in more advanced cases, there's tools that you can add, and these tools can refer to other, for example, to other workflows. But in this case, I'm using it just as an extractor, information extractor, to extract information from what I got from Okay, so so I'm using AI to gather some information and then putting that in Baserog. If they do have a website, then I want to know more information. So what I've actually done, initially I tried to use N8N, but it failed in a lot of ways. So I create a script, which I'm calling through N8N, to create a screenshot, take a screenshot of that website, and then with LLMs try to evaluate that website. And then if they have a social website like Instagram or Facebook, in a lot of cases they also mention their email there. So I'm trying to extract using browserless, trying to extract that information from Facebook and Instagram. And in the end, because I really wanted to automate almost everything, after I have a customer and I need to create a proposal for them for something bigger than just a website, then I created a very small Sidebun node, because you can also create custom nodes in an A10, whatever node that you want. And I created a custom node for myself to be able to get the data from Pipedrive, which is my CRM again, and get the deal, the products, and then create a page in Sidebun and import that page, and then create a draft in my email, so I instantly, when I open my email, I have a draft that I can then review and send it to the customer. So my name is Simos, as I think I mentioned that, yes. I've 15 years of experience in building different websites. Actually, it's more than that, but yeah, nevertheless. My first business was also in web hosting, but not developing websites, just hosting. And I started that when I was 20, sold it at 24, and then I joined corporate, unfortunately. But in between I had different businesses, and 3 of them were actually using no-code platforms, and that's how I sort of got the idea of doing that. And the most important thing is that I am looking for co-founders. It doesn't matter if you're technical, it doesn't matter if you're commercial, because we need both. And if you're interested, just come talk to me afterwards or add me on LinkedIn and send me a message.
Cool.
Thank you, Simos. 3 minutes for questions. Any question for Simos? Yeah, we have a question.
Hi.
You can already answer. How much money have you?
How much money have you spent for scraping the data for those emails?
For those emails, yes. Probably 0. So I have a server at home.
LLMs and analyzing.
LLMs. Again, 0. So Azure and Bedrock. Both on Microsoft Startup Hub, Microsoft Startup for Foundries now called, but also the AWS Startup credits, as well as the Google Cloud credits.
Any other question? Oh, yeah.
So just to add a bit here, so when I was trying to scrape Google Maps, the Google Maps APIs, at some point, I don't know, a script got stuck or whatever, it went into a loop. And in the morning, I received an email from Google saying that, you know what, you have like 800 euros on, your bill is quite high, it's 800 euros, it's very unusual. I sort of forgot about it, and then at night, it was 2,000 euros. But thankfully, the Google Maps billing team was very nice to me. I explained everything, and I just removed the charge, because they saw it was actually duplicate data that was requested.
Hi, Simos. Of how many organizations have you scraped the data?
I don't know exactly, it's thousands. It's
Tens, hundreds, thousands?
Yeah. What did you ask?
Answer, yes.
No, you weren't one of them.
I'm curious, what is the success rate of your cold outreach experiment?
Actually, it's more successful than what I was expecting. I think I have an 8% replies, out of which in the end around 3% are interested. Not all of them, not with all of them, eventually we find a way to do it. But yeah, it is quite successful. So whoever says cold email does not work, well, it does.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for the presentation. So every website has like a specific goal, right, to get more clients or sell some product. And I'm just curious, how do you take this into account, like making these drafts or like building websites for different companies? Because you can basically build HTML. It's understandable, but based on that, you need to keep in mind that every business has like own goal, and first of all, websites should serve this need, not like HTML, right? So how do you make sure that you build exactly, not exactly, but what kind of product, what company needs?
So when you start yeah, the LLMs do that, and they're quite accurate, I have to say. But when you start creating a website, it's not just that we just ask you to put in a prompt. We ask you, the LLM actually replies back and asks you more information about your business and tries to guide you in order to get the right information out of you. Like, what kind of page do you need? What is the goal? What are the colors that you have? If you have any colors, do you have a logo that we can use? Things like that. And then after that, you can generate your website.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Simos. An applause for him. And
Lena, who's gonna tell us about conversational AI, and it's gonna be there will be no code, right, on your screen?
There will be
no code. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Lena, and today we're going to talk about how to make AI sound human, and we're going to discuss...
Full screen, please, full screen.
I know, it will come. And we're going to talk about whether we should, can we, and what happens when we do. And there is no full screen now because I'm first going to show you a video of my friend Nicholas.
Hey, I saw your message on Telegram earlier. You said you wanted to chat. What's up?
Hey, yeah, I'm preparing for a presentation today on the topic of whether you want to make AI sound human. What do you think?
I think it's a cool idea, but like, how human are we talking? Just natural and conversational, or actually trying to mimic people fully?
Yeah, everything, and I wonder how helpful that is. Does it do any good?
I guess it depends. Like, does it make interactions better, or does it just weird people out? What do you think?
I think it weirds people out and people get confused a lot.
Let me think. Do you think there's a balance?
Yes, I think there needs to be a balance, and that's also what the topic of today's lecture is about.
So, like, finding the sweet spot where it feels natural, but still, obviously AI. How are you planning to explain that?
That's exactly what I'm going to talk about right now.
So, yeah, this is, clearly AI, and this is what we're going to talk about today, whether we should be building this kind of AI and things like that. So, question to you all, who here is teaching machines to speak? Who is building chatbots, voice agents, digital humans? Okay, not the majority of people, but still some. I've been teaching AIs to speak for the last 7 years. And recently I noticed a weird thing. Now that there are a lot of voice agents, a lot of companies are coming to me and they're saying, oh, our chatbot, the voice agent sounds too robotic, users hang up on it, they want to transfer to human. And can we make it sound more human, please? And also not tell people that it's an AI. And I hear this a lot recently, and there's a lot to talk about this, so let's unpack that. First of all, what does sound human actually mean? That's a little bit of a weird requirement. We all sound a little bit differently, and we deliver speech in different ways. Some people use a lot of what you mean, like my friend Nicholas. Some are really concise, and some can talk forever. Like, does sound human actually mean better? Do we really want our AI to sound more human? My name is Lena. I am founder of ParsLabs, which is a conversational AI agency, and Chatbotly, which is a SaaS platform where you can build chatbots. And I've been building chatbots, AI agents, voice agents for the last 7 years. I've worked with more than 90 clients by now, and I have a multidisciplinary background. I actually studied linguistics and artificial intelligence. And this is what I combine in my work. And today we're going to talk about why to make chatbots sound human, if at all, when is it helpful and when is it not, and some practical tips on how to do that in cases when it is actually useful. And I'm going to be using all those words interchangeably: AI assistants, AI agents, voice agents, chatbots. So in my talk, they all are the same. And I'll try to do a quick version of this talk. To start with, I suggest that we think about chatbots and AI agents as tools to solve problems. They're just an interface to solve a problem. And with any problem, we need to start with identifying it and saying, okay, what kind of problem am I trying to solve? So if it is customer support agent, then the problem that the chatbot is trying to solve is to get the answer to the user really quickly and actually hopefully solve something on the back end so we don't have an annoyed user. And after that, we need to ask ourselves, will sounding human, whatever that means, we'll define later, will help to solve that problem? And if not, then maybe you don't need to make your AI agent sound more human. So for our specific use case, our specific problem, will it help with the fact that no one actually wants to talk to our chatbot? Probably not. Often not. Often people hang up on the phone not because your voice agent sounds robotic, but actually because it doesn't solve the problem. And once people start talking to it, then it is completely incapable. So instead of trying to make it human, you should actually make it useful first. But that's another topic. Let's take a step back and think, what does make AI sound human? So I wrote down some human skills. I think that when customers come to me and they say, I want my AI to sound human, they mean that they want that AI actually understands what the user is saying instead of saying, I don't know, or saying something completely irrelevant. Then the AI needs to generate the answer, so the text, plus the voice. So the voice needs to sound human-like and not creepy. And then the fourth level is the human level capacity. So emotion detection, empathy, and some personalization, like when we are talking to each other, I know who am I talking to, and I will adjust my speech a little bit to my target audience. So to make AI sound human, we need more or less all of that. Now, is more human always better? Well, according to research, actually people do like the human approach in chatbots, and this can trigger a stronger emotional connection and relational response. So up to a point, yes, we do want AI to sound a little bit more human. At the same time, the super robotic AI voices, they put our brain into this weird mode when we are not quite sure whom we are talking with, and our brain is flagging it as something that we need to constantly monitor and to be alert. So yes, making chatbots sound human does sometimes improve user satisfaction and helps to build trust. So I understand why people want to do that. Now, to sound human or not to sound human, I believe that it actually depends again on your goal and the use case that you are trying to solve. So we can look into a few examples. For example, well, let's start actually from the bottom. The transactional chatbot, let's say it's an airline chatbot that helps you book tickets. What it needs to do is to help you book tickets really fast, and we don't really care about the delivery method that much as I need my ticket, and preferably really quickly. With therapy chatbots, emotional support chatbots, maybe sounding more human makes a little bit more sense because it helps to build trust with the user, and people are more willing to share information when it sounds a little bit more human. With customer support, I believe it also can be helpful. We are really used to talking to machines in those commands like we do on Google search, but if it is a chatbot that sounds a little bit more human, then we will be sharing more information with it, and then the more information we get on the other end, then we can help better. So yes, it depends on your use case. Now, why today it is still hard to make AI sound human? Do we have time? Well, we'll watch a short video.
Especially amen to that. If there's more you'd like to discuss, I'm here. Amen.
Can you tell us a little
Always
bit about
here for more
yourself?
conversation. Prego. Sempre qui bit. Sure. What would you like to know more about?
Tell us what your purpose is.
My purpose is to foster AI-human harmony, creating meaningful connections and promoting a world where all life flourishes.
Okay, so the last response was all rightish, but in the beginning you saw that it was a little bit confused and didn't know what's happening. Also, I don't know what's happening. Okay, managed. So what happened? Understanding is currently still a problem. In this video there were a lot of background noises, there was a group of people talking, and when a lot of people are talking at the same time, the technology doesn't know that we are not talking to it, so it keeps answering all the questions and it confuses noise with some Italian language. It interrupts in weird moments and it doesn't know when to stop speaking. So at some point the person who was running this robot, that was at the conference a few weeks ago, had to actually mute it so that it just stops talking. So understanding what the user says is still a problem. Generating the answer is also still a problem. Most of those kind of apps, they run on GPT-like models which are trained on huge masses of written text. And we are trying to design conversations. So LLMs are not trained to do conversations. And this is why the base models sound weird and you have to do something about it, which we're going to talk about later. And the generating voice. So the voice quality, like my friend Nicholas, I actually quite like that voice, but the latency thing, and we run it, I showed you the video on X speed, but actually the latency is still slow, so I say something and Nicholas is thinking for a few seconds and then it starts speaking, so that becomes weird. Now, Unbody, who knows what that is? Okay, some people still don't. Basically, the thing is that when we are building those kind of robots, there is a scale. First, it looks completely like a robot, like this dot, then it becomes a little bit more humanish-like, and then human, but weird kind of human, and then again human, weird kind of human, and then more human. Basically, the idea is that this part feels really weird to us, and when we are talking to something that is trying to behave like human, but it's just not quite yet there, our brain just shuts down and we don't so much like it. And now when we are building those kind of human-like experiences, that's what is happening. When it almost sounds like human, it feels weird. In voice, it can mean this latency issue, so it's a little bit slow to respond, and you're like, no, human wouldn't do that, so I feel uncomfortable. Then intonation and emotion detection also, if it's off, then it also triggers discomfort. In text, it can be fake empathy. For example, when the chatbot says, I hear you, I feel how you feel. Chatbots don't have consciousness, so that feels immediately off, and some customer support chatbots also do that. What else is a problem? The human-like voice creates human-level expectations. So if somehow you do manage to create a voice agent chatbot that sounds completely like human, then the person talking to it would expect that it would have the capacities of a human as well. And if we then immediately get something not related to what we were talking about, or it says, sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about, then again, users get frustrated. So we need to balance things when we build AI. And I need to be on time, so let's see what we're gonna skip. Then I'm just gonna do a few tips on how to make AI sound a little bit more human when we decide that yes, it's gonna be helpful. So the first thing is to learn about linguistic differences between spoken and written speech. Like I said, you probably are working with GPT models who are not trained to do conversations. So and you probably are also, most of you not linguists, so you don't know what the difference is, and even I studied linguistics, I forgot. So you can use a tool called Elicit, for example, or ChatGPT Deep Research, that can help you analyze any kind of scientific articles, but I love to do it for linguistics. So you can ask something like, what's the difference between written and spoken speech? And it does a summary for you, and you do a prompt like this that says, okay, it needs to be short, use active voice instead of passive, and add things like and in which places in the sentence you added is also important. And this is from the Nicholas friend. You can also use that, by the way, to learn about the impact that human-like voices have on human-to-robot interaction, also super interesting. Then an important thing is to choose whom we are imitating. Like I said, make it sound human is a weird kind of statement. Be more specific and say, I want to make it sound like my best performing sales agent. Okay, this we can already work with. Have a look at the transcripts from your best performing sales agent. This work is called conversation analysis. This is a specific kind of person that goes through those transcripts and it finds, okay, what is so specific about how this person talked? Why do they sell so well? You can also do that using AI. You can put your transcripts into ChatGPT and ask it to come up with a playbook. And here we are not just trying to imitate your best performing human, but also to teach AI the skills of it. Like how does it structure the conversation for this specific job? I think that's very important. Then adding examples to your prompt helps from the real conversations, not the made up ones, and fine tuning. But also, the fake empathy, what I already talked about, don't do that. That sounds creepy. So when you say, I feel upset, but this is a chatbot, this just doesn't fly. Instead, use passive voice and say something like, it's understandable you are upset. That does provide empathy, but it does match better with what chatbot is. And please always disclose that it's an AI, and it's not just because I'm begging you to do that, but also because it is harming your business. When human thinks, for some reason, that they are talking to a human because your voice agent is so good, and then they discover that it is not, the trust is broken, and this is the worst reason why you would be building chatbots. What you need to do instead is to manage expectations. You need to say that I'm an AI assistant and I know you've seen a lot of horrible chatbots in the past, so you don't want to talk to me, but hey, I actually got better and I can help you faster than a human. Also mention how I can help you get answers about pricing and availability. And if I won't be able to help, then I'll transfer you to a human. How can I help you today? So this works much better, and you can make it shorter, obviously. This works much better than deceiving the person into, oh, this is a voice AI, and then it doesn't match the skills. So what the future holds, that's 2 minutes, I got 2 minutes. So within 1 or 2 years, I believe that the voice quality will get better, the latency issues will be solved, and the interruptions hopefully also. So I don't think it's a question of whether we should make AI sound human. I think people are just gonna make it better and it's gonna sound plus minus human. So what we need to do is to understand that human-like conversations, they create trust. People will assign intelligence and empathy to human-like systems, and they will lower their guard. This already is happening with ChatGPT, that we all know that ChatGPT hallucinates so much. Still, how many of you are checking if it hallucinated? How many of you are double-checking the information? Cool. Good. I think this is a special crowd. I believe that most people are not doing that. When we are going into voice and digital humans, this is going to be even less, and if we do manage to get this level of human likeness, then people are going to be trusting AI like they are trusting humans. And if this trust will be misplaced because it's hallucinating or because it lacks the capacity that you are promising, it cannot actually be useful and perform the task, then it will lead to user harm and brand damage, and we do not want that. And we also still don't have enough research on the effects of human likeness, like chatbots on people. So this is also something that we still have to discover collectively. And some questions that I personally am wondering: how will our behavior and expectations change towards AI as it becomes more human-like, and towards each other? I don't know if you know this anecdote with Alexa voice bot that kids started to speak to it in commands, because this is how you was back then expected to talk to a voice agent, and then they started to speak like this to their parents. And with the digital humans, if you know this kind of avatars, there is this thing that if you're talking to a digital human, then you're less likely to hang up because it is rude. And this is how currently humans behave in the research. However, if those digital humans are going to be everywhere, then probably we will be more likely to hang up on them. Would we start to ignore people more often because we do that with chatbots? Will we start to speak differently with each other and relate differently to each other? So this all interests me, so I'll come and talk about that. So I want to end with saying that with great power comes great responsibility. And just to sum up, making chatbots sound human is a weird goal. Be more specific and intentional. Think about why you want to make AI sound human and whether for your task it is beneficial, or maybe you should first focus on improving the skills. Learn from best performing humans. Study differences between written and spoken language. Manage user expectations by saying that AI is AI, and take responsibility that comes with the trust that comes with making systems that look like human. This is my LinkedIn, and if you love this topic, come and talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Do we have any questions? Yes.
One little remark and a little question is like what everyone should know is that actually with the EU AI Act, right, it's going to be obligatory for AIs to mention that they're AI. So from next year around June, I think you'll be breaking the law if you don't actually disclose. So just FYI. As a linguist, like I was wondering how you feel about like, is there some specific stuff that you feel like regular people or engineers, they don't understand about language or about conversations that you feel in the last few years that you keep repeating? Like, I wonder how many of those kind of things there are.
Yeah, there are a lot of things like that. And I think that's related to chatbots specifically and not necessarily how humans talk. Like one thing that people miss is introducing what AI is doing. A lot of people build chatbots and they think, okay, it's gonna work and people are gonna come and ask questions. But a lot of people don't know how to ask questions, and then no one is using your chatbot. And this is one thing I think is important, to actually specify how the chatbot can help, and this helps to improve the usage.
Question on this.
Question. Thank you for the presentation. What is the reason why the chatbots are not trained on conversational data?
I guess there was more non-conversational data and it was not the core use case. I actually don't know if someone knows if someone has been training LLMs on conversations. I think soon we will be.
I think I shared with the DeepSeek, actually, they do share all the conversational data, and they can be really human and really peachy.
Okay, I have to test
that. Last question.
Okay, so when you said earlier that in order to make AI sound more human, like for example, like depending on the context, like you need different things, or like we don't want it sounding like going into the uncanny valley. You have all these like, we should go in this direction. Is that coming from your anecdotal experience, or are you incorporating like research, or like what's the process of you incorporating information to decide on like the directionality of where you want to develop your agents?
So I don't think I quite understood your
Okay.
question. So which direction are you talking about?
Like in terms of like the goals you want to fulfill with your agent, how do you decide that and prioritize it? Like what, do you have like a process for being like, oh, like we want to make agents sound more like this or more like that? How do you decide the shifts?
Not sure if I quite got it, but let me try. So we try to analyze how humans behave in a certain role, and then we run experiments with the AI that we build, and we notice that if we do train on the playbooks from best performing humans, then we get better results. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Thank you.
One more hand.
Thank you very much.
Okay, who came here for some code? Yeah, okay. I just heard that Roman, he was at another meetup and he was like, yo, can I expected this to be so technical, but it was actually not technical.
Who is that?
That's Roman there, up there.
You want technical?
Yeah, so we got you a technical guy here. This is Amir, he spoke here already a few times, and he made his own framework. Yeah. Good luck with that. He didn't vibe code it.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Amir. I'm co-founder at a startup called Unbody, which yesterday we just became open source. We released alpha. That was a big thing for us. We are not even a year old. I think previously has been mentioned that people want human-like voices. I would like to take it a step further, and I think we are in an era that we are shifting towards more human software. But what's happening currently, we are keep building on top of legacy software, legacy stack, that more human software, and that doesn't really work. It becomes most of the case like a duck and take solution. It's not solid. There is no standard way. That's why at Unbody we started rethinking the whole development stack, particularly in the backend. And we designed a new backend system based on 4 principles, using human as basically inspiration. These 4 layers that we have designed it, the first layer is perception, and the second one, memory, reasoning, and action. For each of these layers, your backend stack, the new generation of software, requires a lot of different modularity and module and plugins and agents. For example, when we talk about perception, how we perceive the work is based on the data, based on the input we receive. So that's where the knowledge fabrication should happen. We are talking about, in a technical sense, data ingestion, data processing, enhancement, chunking, etc., vectorization. So Unbody basically covers all those parts and basically give plugins, and it's compatible with other open source projects. In terms of memory, you need, again, persistent file storage, you need persistent media storage, media streaming, you need vector stores, you need a lot of other things you need. And we also get that layer also covered. Again, when it comes to reasoning, we are talking about generative AI modules. And working with LLMs, we are talking about reasoning, we are talking about agent function calling and function registries, etc., etc. So each of them also, again, has its own modules, complications, etc. And at the end of the day, we have MCP layers and APIs that you need to communicate with outside world. That's the layer we call action. Okay, this was my only presentation. Now let's dive into the code. Okay, cool. Before diving into the code, let's see what you can. I'm gonna showcase one use case that is actually solving a very big problem for us as a startup. So as a startup, we are not only writing codes, you need to also make money. So we need to find clients, and the typical way of doing that is using outreach. You get a list of leads, particular ICPs that you have, and you need to reach out to them, etc., etc. But the bouncing rate is terrible. It's like 1%, not even that. So we decided to, what if we, instead of talking, showing? So we decided to approach it differently. We decided to automate that whole process and build an agent on top of website of each company that we are going to target. That agent basically represents, it clones their entire website as a knowledge base and turn it into a more minimal version of that website, like a chatbot, a Q&A. So this is actually, I just did it today. I cooked it up with a startup because we are here at their office. So this is what what it does. Basically, it goes scrape out the entire website and then extract the semantics out of it, and then creates this sort of second brain out of it, and then a developer like myself can build such a thing on top of it. Let's just start with, for example, what industries does. And again, we build this for our customers. That's why some of this, like industries related, are cliche, but it tries to understand, retrieve the relative information, but more importantly, understand the intention behind what I have asked. Or again, another question, let's say, for example, can you provide me information on startups, location, and facilities? Again, this needs to be processed and parsed into parameters that you can go and based on retrieve information. And that's different than a prompt that you give the system to retrieve. So you want to see the sources that it's based on, and it finds the sources. And this is very like a fast thing. It's like 10 pages. It didn't really go in deep. But you can see it's already kind of very accurate and give the answer. Why? Because you are narrating the answer, but also it's not only the raw data. It's not only the raw web pages that you are feeding to the system. It's building the relations between web pages, extracting and curating the data using the agents. So now for today, we are going to see the code behind that and how it's been built. Of course, I'm not going to show you how you can build a chatbot. That's pretty common. Everyone has its own trick. But what I'm going to particularly talk about today are enhancer agents at Unbody. Enhancer agents are part of the agents that basically transform the raw data into something bigger, into something richer, more contextual, extracting particular parameters that we need specifically for a particular chatbot. This is how Unbody works in general. So basically create one instance of Unbody admin, you can ignore it. We create the project settings. Everything relies on the project settings. So, and the project settings, that's where you can basically have text vectorizer setting. Is this small or this is good? Okay.
It's not very good.
Bigger. Sure. I hope it's not VS Code, but
what's the shortcut?
there is no shortcut. Should be okay. All right. Okay, so project settings, I was talking about how you set up your basically foundational layer, right? So you need a vectorizer. Why? Because we are building on top of vector DBs, not relational DBs. That's the main difference that Unbody has. And then you set up the text vectorizer, or you bring your own vectorizer, or use one of the third parties, or one of our built-in open source one. Generative modules, I'm using GPT-4, or re-rankers, we are working with Cohere English V3 because in my experience that's the best for re-ranking. Auto summary, auto vision, these are the enhancers that I was talking about. These are the agents basically. These are little plugins, smart plugins, plugins with agency that we put into the pipeline. And this, for example, says as soon as there is any text in the pipeline, take the text and then summarize it and use the generative feedback loop mechanism for you who is looking for a technical term, to inject it back into the database. And this way, your database starts growing multidimensional. So you don't have just a web page anymore. You have also a summary of that web page also extracted and stored back. Another plugin, native plugin we have is Auto Vision. Auto Vision does three things. It applies Auto OCR. It applies OCR on top of any visual assets that come to the pipeline, generates a caption for every image that is in the pipeline, and extract the keywords from it, and later on we'll also add face detection, etc., etc. So this way, again, we are enhancing, augmenting images. So the image itself is not just a vector representation anymore, but it's like a tree. It has leaves, and we extract those leaves and put it back into the database. All right, but now the interesting part is that, so okay, those were like the built-in native enhancers that we offer. But what if I want as a developer to define more enhancers, to do more with my data? For example, in this case, we wanted to know, for example, because when you are building such an application, you need to create a whole a kind of an overall knowledge, overall context of the entire pages. You want to know what this company does in general, or you want to know what type of clients they have. But then if you are going to crawl the web pages, you do it page by page, right? So you need to create this persistent, universal context of the entire application to gather them all in one place. So in this case, for example, we wanted to know what services they offer. It might be in various pages, or what type of, for example, I don't know, additional highlights, or industries that they serve, or top 10 frequently asked questions. So for each of these, we instruct the agent, and for this one, we are using the built-in utility agent of Unbody that is called Summarizer. What it does, it persists the long-term context and overall, and iterate until it gets the best out of this. But the cool thing about Unbody, or not only about Unbody, but about structural generative models, that you can instruct them to give me a particular outcome. And that's very important when you are building anything at production at the scale, something that is user consuming. Because you want to be certain that what is the outcome of that model. And this way we are basically saving it back into the thing and then pass it to the next, into the pipeline, next step. And next step, now we have the entire summary as a whole text. We create a long text file. Now we want to extract parameters from it. And here I use another kind of enhancer agent that is a structure generator. And what this does, you give it a whole bunch of text, and then you say extract these particular parameters in this exact schema that I give you. Don't steer away anywhere. So stay there, give me FAQ, which is an array of objects, and every object has a question and answer, and you describe it. List of top 10 FAQ in the page. All right? So this way we are constructing more and more. This way, who has done web development here? This way, we are saying goodbye to CMSs, content management systems. We don't need them. Instead, we are building a lot of our customers are replacing their CMS with something that we call PMS, like a prompt management system, because that's the way we are shifting this whole transition as well. Because you want to control the flow, you don't want to, micromanage anymore. But anyway, that's another topic. So that was like the enhancement of the whole agent, of the whole app, but we can do the same for every page as well. So we create a pipeline that basically that is applied to every web page you see here. And I can also inject hard-coded variables into it. For example, here I can say page categories, because we have a global categories of clients and industry that they do, and I want to access this in the sandbox when it's executed and injected into the prompt. So here again we use a structure generator. I give it the prompt, but then I can also use the variables inside, but also inject the data, the text that is extracted previously from the web crawler, and then say, hey, extract what type of a category this page belongs to. You see, again, the agents are doing the same as something that a content management system would do, but automatically on their own, but in a very controlled manner. Okay, this is done. Then basically we define we basically build those agents, and then we add them to the enhancement layer of Unbody settings. Then we create a project, we create a source and the web crawler, and the source type should be web crawler, because again, Unbody is agnostic to the location of the data. You can say my data is on Google Drive, my data is on Discord, is on a website, a web crawler, etc. And then you give it an entry point. The entry point is the URL website or the sub page of it. It scrolls on top of that. And then the max depth, how deep the crawler should go, and how many pages, should it render the JS or not, and that's it. Then you initialize. So everything else basically, so all these stories that I talked to basically became all in one unified platform. And from this on, I don't need to do anything else, because then I just need to make a RAG, for example, right? Just quickly, I'm going to show you how the RAG also is built. Okay. The RAG has multiple stages, especially if it's agentic RAG. With agentic RAG, we are talking about autonomy, giving autonomy of RAG. Everyone knows RAG, what RAG is, right? It's retrieval augmented generation. The retrieval means go and grab relative information to a particular query that user has asked for, right? But then user says, I love pizza, how to make it? If you feed this entire query and try to retrieve information based on these, the second part, how to make it, it's completely irrelevant. It's going to make the semantic search confused. So you need to leave that out and only extract pizza. That's the only word you want to grab information based on. So to increase the accuracy, you need to do something we call query parsing. You need to analyze the user's intention, user's parameters, extract what you want. And for that, we have this parse query as a utility with Unbody. And you can also define, you say, from the user query, for me, if the user, for example, talked about clients, because we are building this for these companies and agencies. For example, client, customers names that user is interested in, or industries that user is interested in. So what happens here, as soon as the query of the users comes in, it tries to extract this particular information. So later on, we can, it was mentioned that hybrid search, we can extract parameters and apply to hard-coded where filters, database queries, etc. So to limit them. Anyhow, apart from that, the basically parse query of Unbody extracted by default these four things: query, the key concepts, the intention of the user, if they ask a question or they want to just do a search, is it relevant or not? And the relevancy, again, comes from you by giving a guideline that you say, hey, you are an agent, Okay, as a part of the layer RAG pipeline, this pipeline is used to answer questions, search for information of a website of a software company, right? This is how we instruct that query agent again. The second thing is after understanding the question, then you need to search. And this is how, for example, you do a semantic search with Unbody. You say search about the query, but then you basically make it a bit more biased, steer it towards the concepts that are extracted, so we are making it even more accurate. And then, so you basically say, yes, this is the whole thing, but go after this, right? So we are pushing it a bit further. And you select what needs to be coming out, and once the data is there, for images, etc. And then you can do the same operation on top of images. Again, it's agnostic to the type of data. When you have it, you just apply it to anything. And then the last part is the thinking. That's where the reasoning happens, and that's where we basically generate. You say, okay, these are the top 10 relevant pages or information we found. Now generate an answer for the user. This was like the whole thing. If you would like, I can also show one more demo, which I think it's gonna be cool. Let's have that. This is another like example, but not a chatbot. So this is like a blog platform we are doing as a pilot with AI Tinkerers. It's open source as well. So what they have a recording, like here that we have a lot of talks. They also have a camera recording the entire session of every person. They upload these files, video files, raw footages into a Google Drive folder. That Google Drive folder is connected to Unbody. Unbody process all of those, etc., and this is what they build on top of it. So for example, they can create these categories, you know, the way how Netflix create those categories dynamically. So it goes and says, oh, okay, there are 3 videos, I'm going to create a category called AI Revolutionaries, Tinkerers with Tomorrow, and then 3 videos are related to that topic. So I put it in there with the description. And again, it all decides on its own how many videos should be here, what are the whole categories. Again, using those agents that I just showed you, you instruct the system, you make the pipelines, and then everything else is kind of dynamic. Or I can go here and click, and you see the list of like all the suggestive queries and okay, what has to be asked. And again, these are all based on the content of those videos and presentations that people gave. I don't know, for example, let's say I can also ask a question. Yesterday I met one of those who gave a talking 1 year ago, and he was still there, who did talk about, I don't know, Shell and LLM.
OpenAI is rolling out this since today in their ChatGPT application to do as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. That's what they
not with your videos, but with any YouTube videos.
That's great. So here you go. He gave this presentation. Now I can go to him, and you see this video has a thumbnail generated. The video is instantly playing, and again, these are all like raw footages they gave. But this video is enhanced. It's completely streamable. It's flawlessly streamed. So again, these are also part of those layer of applications when you're making. So it's not only a chatbot. When you're building a product at a scale, you need a lot of various other modules that you need to have. Anyhow, the title of the video, even the name, who is speaking in this video, the system figured it out. It extracted it, you know? So that's what we are talking. We mean when we say knowledge base. When we are saying second brain, we are going beyond the relational databases and prefix data, the schema connecting together. We as developers or we as the product owner needs to define the logic of that brain, and the system should take care of it. So here everything is there. Now I can go and chat with the video itself. For example, what did this guy talked about in one short sentence? Make it funny.
Can it also find the scenes?
Yeah. Nice. It finds basically where it at what time it started and etc. And there you go, a speaker presenter yesterday. So it's not really funny.
Maybe that was a really hard thing to make funny.
Summarize it as a speaker demo. Yeah, it's not funny. Cool. Yeah, that was basically what I wanted to share today, but more importantly, the open source one, because that's for us the big deal. Like, because we believe we cannot really like build and continue building in silos. So we need the feedback, we need the support. I always say we need more issues than we need the stars. So if you would like to dive deeper, please scan the code and yeah, or reach out to me. I'm going to be also here. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions? Yes.
Roman, I just turned off the mic. Oh no, it's okay. Is it okay if I ask 3 questions?
No.
No, one question at a time.
That was one. Okay.
I'm gonna be here, so.
Okay.
Afterwards.
So say we have to do RAG over a very specific document with contextual clues and very niche jargon. How do you handle that?
One particular RAG?
I mean,
one particular document?
Just how do you do retrieval?
You need to, yes, you need to basically, we are assuming that content is already indexed and processed or no? So what needs to happen, that PDF file needs to come in, you read it page by page, and based on your splitting or chunking strategy, you split it, extract the information, and these are all in a vector space now, right?
Yeah, okay, the question is, say the chunk that we retrieve, it is, it relies on some context that is outside of this chunk. And there is some, I don't know, metadata needed or some additional explanation.
Yeah, I know. That means you should go back and review your chunking strategy. You didn't do a good chunking strategy because, again, this is not an off-the-shelf solution that you just pick it up and it works. It's very domain specific. So you need to design your pipeline, you need to design the entire flow based on the particular data. So when the customers come to me and say, hey, what type of a prompt you should put in here or what type of a structure we should have, the first question we ask is, what is your data? How does it look? Give me a sample. You know, because every case is different. Even we had one client that they're in franchise business and they have thousands of PDFs. And so far, for them, we had to make 4 PDF parsers because every time there is a new PDF that breaks the system. So it's a very domain-specific error.
Okay.
1 second.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will ask another question.
He was next.
Great presentation. One of the other speakers was already talking about what if you have sensitive data and you want to keep track where that's going on. Have you ever looked at that within your system?
No. So access level is very important, and that's one of the features we are basically proud of that we offer. You can treat your knowledge base exactly like treating any other classical database that you do. So you can apply access level at any level that you want. But when it comes to privacy, of course, it's up to you as a developer or the team to see if you want to use self-hosted model or not, if you want to use OpenAI or not, if you want to use Cohere, Mixra, or no, you want to bring your own model, etc. So these are all basically the decision you need to make.
Next question.
Yes.
Hi. You talked about having to build multiple PDF parsers and about chunking strategies. Have you also looked at building knowledge graphs out of the documents so that you can have chunks and also relate these chunks to other chunks, even if they're not embedding-wise related?
Knowledge graph as knowledge like graph databases or no knowledge base graph?
Knowledge graph as like a triple store or Neo4j store.
Yeah.
Where these chunks are related.
Yeah, I think those are more techniques. I think vector databases can be as effective as a graph database. But no, we haven't given a thought because so far the vector stores are doing the job for us.
Yeah, there's research about LightRag. Maybe that could be interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, why not?
Last question.
So one part of the presentation you had chunking different commands for different workers. How do you stop them in that state machine to debug of your response? Like,
Yeah.
you Not this one, I think.
No, I know. You mean...
Yeah, so you have this new text vectorizer, above actually. The previous
No, I wanted to show you this. So there is one parameter here, if, and here you basically make a condition. It's going to be, you basically inject the code into it. Currently, you cannot do it with our cloud version. It's only on the open source. And on open source, it's basically injecting untrusted code. And that the security will be up to you. Take care of it, because our open source is in it.
Then you can help them any step.
Yeah, you can basically, here it's a function, right? So I can say,
you can basically create unit tests on that function.
If ctx dot blah blah is that, then don't do that, or stop the...
Okay. Can you, sorry.
You're a host, you get a question.
If the you're making, sorry, you're creating sort of classes, right? I mean, I'm Python, so it's a bit different, but you're making sort of like classes where you extract information, you provide descriptions of like look for this and that, right? Do you do any sort of check on that, like a validator kind of thing, and would that be possible in this sort of setup?
No, not at the moment, but that's on our roadmap, for sure. That's observability is very important, and no, not at the moment, but yeah, you have to.
And then it has to be indeed a probabilistic
but then it's also a tricky question, or a tricky topic, because the more control you add, the more agency you remove, you know? So you need to see what's the point. Like at some point you want to start wondering, should I automate this at all or not?
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Networking time.
Okay, everybody please scan this QR code with all your GitHub accounts. This guy put his fucking work for years and years open up on GitHub, and he sponsored some of the drinks tonight. So give a big hand and please scan this code. Okay, please scan it. Thank you everyone.